This number right here fixes all of the mouse input issues inside of Warzone right now, and barely anyone knows about it. So I'm going to break it all down for you guys today, as well as take you guys through the best mouse and keyboard settings to get you moving better, aiming better, and hopefully able to compete with that broken aim assist of the controller players. Before I can explain what this mysterious number is and why it's so important to fixing mouse input inside of this game, we do need to cover the in-game mouse settings first. So starting off with mouse sensitivity, I can't recommend a specific number for you here. Do not go and watch a streamer looking at their sensitivity and just copying it, because you'll probably find it doesn't exactly work for you. But for now, I'd recommend that you start off by picking a sensitivity where if you move your mouse from the left side of your mouse mat to the right side, you are able to do a 360. That's going to depend on how big your mouse mat is, whether you got a really big one or a smaller one. Ideally, you want a bigger one. But that 360-degree turn just means you're going to always be able to at least do a 180 if someone's behind you. You're going to have a lot of control. For me, 4.69 is what I've ran with for quite a long time now, and it feels good to me. If you click Show More, down here you can actually set your individual multipliers. For mouse, I would not recommend changing the vertical. You definitely don't want this. You want to have even sensitivities, whether you're moving up and down or around, because there's a lot more free motion. Things like third person, ground vehicles, air, kill streaks, all this kind of stuff. You might find that in a vehicle, you want a higher sensitivity. I actually might play around with this because I sometimes feel like ground vehicles are quite low sensitivity. We don't actually need to aim at specific people. We just want to get lots of information. So it's up to you guys. At the moment, I've left all of mine at 1. ADS sensitivity multiplier. By default, I believe this is at 1.0, which means that it should match the mouse sensitivity of your non-ADS base sensitivity. And for the longest time, I thought this was the best thing to do because you want to have the exact same sensitivity. You don't want it to suddenly swap because it's going to feel weird. Well, it turns out leaving it at 1 actually does make it feel weird, because when you ADS, you lose a little bit of your FOV. So the distance which someone's traveling that you're looking at, it will look like they're moving faster when you ADS as opposed to when you don't. And so to actually balance it out, most people will run with something like a 0.8 or a 0.85 multiplier. I do 0.85, it feels really good to me. This actually gives me a nice feeling of a 1-to-1 ADS to non-ADS sensitivity in-game. Now for Season 1 Reloaded, we had the return of the Champions Nuke quest, but for many casual players, it's going to be incredibly difficult to ever complete it. Lucky for you guys, today's video sponsor, Skycoach, might be your saving grace. Skycoach offer a fast and safe completion of the Champions quest, so you can get that Nuke operator skin in your library, and they even cover camos, weapon levels, and much more too inside of Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone. With a ton of trustworthy reviews, I definitely recommend checking out Skycoach using my link in the description. My code will get you a 10% discount off your purchase, so there's never been a better time to check them out. Below there, we've got the tactical stance sensitivity multiplier, which I also turned to 0.85. And then for ADS sensitivity transition timing, I would recommend you turn this to instant. This way, as soon as you engage that ADS, you will instantly move over to the slower multiplier. Then we have ADS sensitivity multiplier focus. This is specifically the multiplier that applies when you focus in. So when you're sniping and you hold down the focus button to steady your aim, it will kick in this multiplier. For this, once again, just put it to 0.85 so it matches up with our other ADS multipliers, and we've got them all nice and dialed in. Then we've got ADS sensitivity type, which determines which algorithm is used to give you what your mouse sensitivity is when you ADS. For everything I've explained so far, dialing down the ADS sensitivity multiplier, we need to set this to legacy. If you start playing around with relative, this just tends to feel very muddy in this game. Relative has never felt that good. Legacy dialed in with the sensitivity multipliers we've done above feels nice and snappy, so legacy is what I would recommend. Below that, we've then got custom sensitivities per zoom. You can turn this on, and this can be very useful if you are someone especially who likes sniping. You can come in here and you can say, I'm using a 6x scope mainly on my sniper. I'm going to try dialing this down to 0.7, and it's just going to make it slow down a little bit. It's not something I've really dived into because I don't use snipers that often, but I think if you do snipe, this is something that you should come in and dial in, play around, do some plunder or whatever game mode you need to, just to see what feels good for you. Below that, vertical aim axis. This allows you to actually invert the vertical aim. So pulling down makes you aim up, pulling up makes you aim down. Not something you want to do on a mouse. Mouse calibration, very important here. When this game first came out, people were playing around with how you could fix mouse in the game. That is all now put to bed, and there's better ways to fix it. At the time, that worked really well. Since then, it does not work. So for us to get as much of a raw input as possible, you actually want to just make sure everything in here is off or at 0, okay? Very important. Now, what we need to do, save that all, close down the game, and we're gonna take a look at what that mysterious number does. So with the game now closed, you need to come to this folder. It's your documents folder, then Call of Duty, then players. The config file we're gonna edit is options.4.cod23, and then the .cst bit you might not see because you might not have file extensions turned on. But essentially, you should be able to right-click this and then go edit, and it'll open up in Notepad. If that doesn't work, or you just don't have an edit option, you can come down here, open up Notepad, and then drag and drop that file, as I said, onto the Notepad, and it'll open up. With the config file open, you then want to press Control F on your keyboard to bring up the find dialog, and you want to search for yaw. That's Y-A-W. Click Find Next, and you'll find a setting down here called yaw speed. And below that, you'll have pitch speed, and both of these will be set to 140 by default. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Now, this bit of the video is going to get pretty mathsy, so if you don't like maths, then I will try and explain this as simple as possible so you can figure out what you need to put in your config file. But if you do want a bit more information, which I highly recommend you should go and look at, I'm going to leave a link to a video in the description below by a guy called Chromesy, who basically broke down all of this to, I'm pretty sure he discovered this whole thing. I just wanted to share it in a video in my format for my audience, but please do go check him out. This is incredibly important information, and he gives a really good explanation on it all. Basically, this config yaw speed, it shouldn't exist, because the yaw speed inside of this config should be automatically calculated based on what you set your in-game sensitivity to. You multiply it by a yaw coefficient, which is constant for the game. For Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone, it is 0.022, which is that mysterious number that I talked about earlier. In other games like Counter-Strike, Overwatch, or anything else, they will have different coefficients which do this calculation. Instead, in this game, we've actually got to go and figure this out for ourselves. So let's do that. What we need to do is take our in-game sensitivity. Let's get a calculator up here. And you want to put this in. So 4.69, that's mine. Then what you want to do, multiply it by your coefficient. So 0.022. It's always that number for Warzone and Modern Warfare 3. Then last thing you do is you take that and you multiply it by 1,000. So multiply it by 1,000 and you'll get a number in here. For me, it's 103.18. What you then need to do is put that number into the quotation marks next to your speed, so 103.18. Then I like to just fill out the zeros. I'm not sure if you need to do that, but making sure you've got 6 digits after the point so it matches all the others. Then copy that and put it into the pitch speed as well. So we've got it for our yaw and our pitch. And the last thing to do is make sure mouse uses raw input is set to true. Previously, a lot of people recommended putting this on false, and that was basically because when you put this to true, but you don't have the correct numbers here, it feels horrible, and so people were just defaulting to turning raw input off, and it sort of felt okay. It felt better than having the numbers set wrong here, but it still didn't feel perfect. This setup here, with the correct yaw and pitch speed calculated, and using raw input, feels incredible. So you dial this in, you come up here, you press file, then you press save, and you can close out of this config file now. You can reopen your game, and you should feel the mouse input feels incredible. Obviously, if you go and change that mouse sensitivity inside of the game now, you will have to go back into the config file, do the calculation again, and figure out the new yaw and pitch speed to put in there. Hopefully that all makes sense. Let's now jump back in game and continue with the keyboard settings. So we're back in game now in the keyboard and mouse area again. For keybinds, this is personal preference, completely personal preference. You can actually, this is one thing I would recommend where you do go and look at some streamers or some content creators and see if they have any unique little keybinds and stuff that might help you out. But definitely go through and have a look, see if there's anything that's unbound that you actually think, hey, I could actually probably use that. This is one of the great things about keyboard and mouse. We have so many buttons that we can play with to do stuff. So do spend some time going through here and figuring out things that work for you. rather than assuming that default works. Then gameplay. This is the meat and potatoes of keyboard and movement settings for the game. So crouch behavior and prone behavior, I like to put these both to toggle. This way you press it once to activate it, so you press once to go prone, then you can press it again to come out of prone. This means that you don't have to put in a movement input, like a running input, to get out of a prone or something, which is what would happen if you went to go to. I just think toggle is the best overall. Then automatic sprint. A lot of people, if you're playing on controller, will be using automatic tactical sprint. And to be honest, for you guys, I think this is a good idea. Having to push in your stick every time isn't good. But for mouse and keyboard players, keep this off. The reason we're going to do this comes with this setting down here, tactical sprint behavior. We're going to turn this to single tap run instead of double tap. I've explained this before. What this means is you do not need to double tap your shift key anymore to engage a tactical sprint. You just need to press it once. But because we're not on automatic tactical sprint, you still gain the ability to walk around normally in hip fire, which is really helpful for making less noise, making sneaky plays. It just gives you the best of both worlds, running automatic sprint off and single tap run. So I would definitely recommend that you do that. Sprint / tactical sprint behavior, I like to have it on toggle. Then closed backpack on sprint, make sure this is on. This is just going to mean if you're in your backpack doing looting and weapon management and someone starts shooting you, you don't have to press the button to put the backpack away. You just start sprinting and it will go away, so you're not getting caught with your pants around your ankles, which is really handy. Then walk behavior. Not many people use walk. A lot of you might not even have it bound, but I would recommend you do it because it once again just adds another little dimension to your gameplay. You can have this set to hold, and then if you hold the button down here, you will walk really slowly. It can be helpful if you're in those real tense scenarios and you want to play a bit like a rat. You can basically move around with no sound whatsoever. Automatic airborne mantle, the default is partial, and I do believe that this is the best option. This will mean that if hanging onto a ledge as you fall would stop you from basically falling and killing yourself, it will happen, which is nice. But if you're in a situation where you're just like normally jumping like this dude here, you just jump up and over towards this this box here, you won't accidentally mantle onto it unless you input that manual mantle again. So I think that's just the best of both worlds for this setting. Automatic ground mantle hang, make sure this is off. If you have this on, as soon as you move towards any low obstacles like the barriers here, you will mantle over them. You do not want to do this. This makes you lose control of your movement all the time. It just feels horrible. Definitely don't want to use that. For grounded mantle, it's on by default. This is going to make it so that if you once again move up to an obstacle like this, or even up to one of these crates, and you press space while moving towards it, rather than jumping, you will automatically mantle up onto it. This can be good if you want to move as quickly as possible, I will admit. That's why a lot of people like keeping it on. But turning this off will allow you to move up to an obstacle, jump, and peek over it without mantling, which is really, really important. It gives you just so much more dimensions to your gameplay. Slide / dive activation, leave this on independent so that sliding and diving are on separate keys completely. They are used for completely separate things, and also if you have these set to shared, you have to hold the button to dive. Dives are still really good in this game. Yes, you can slide cancel, but diving off of buildings, diving into cover, it's still really important. Keep this on independent. Then slide and dive behavior, assuming you've got this set to independent, it doesn't actually do anything. This would only work if you had these on shared, and then it would be, well, instead of tapping to slide and holding to dive, you hold to slide and you tap to dive. But we're on keyboard. We do not need to share the input, so we are golden. Parachute automatic behavior, by default, this is turned to always, which makes it so you don't accidentally fall and kill yourself, but turning this to off and making it so that you have to pull it yourself actually allows you to get way nearer the ground before you pull your chute. You just have to make sure that you do pull it, otherwise you will be splatting, and it won't be good, and you won't be able to blame it on anything else apart from yourself. But make sure this is off, very, very important. Movement advanced settings in here, there's not a huge amount that I think is actually useful in here. I think you can just leave it all at default. Then we'll move down to combat behaviors. Aim down sight behavior, make sure this is on hold. Toggle ADS is just not a thing, especially in a game as fast as this. Change zoom activation, you can leave that at default. Equipment behavior, I do like to leave this on hold. Once again, it just helps to get your equipment out quicker. You're not having to input two inputs to just throw something. Also, you wouldn't want to cook a grenade and then have to press the button again to throw it, because you'll probably just blow yourself up. Weapon mount activation, make sure this is set to weapon mount toggle. This is going to ensure that you actually use a keybind for this rather than using an existing thing like holding ADS and then pressing your interact key, or holding ADS and then meleeing. No, just have a set input. We're playing on a keyboard. Use those keybinds. For me, I've set it to T, and you should be doing the same, setting it to a specific keybind. Depleted ammo weapon switch, I like to turn this on. Basically, if you ever get down to no ammo, so not just in the clip, but in any of your mags, you'll automatically swap to your secondary, maybe that be an SMG or a pistol or something. It just means that when you're in the middle of a fight, you don't have to keep constantly looking at how much ammo you've got overall and end up accidentally getting to the position where you have no ammo and you lose the gunfight. It will just automatically swap to your secondary and you'll go, okay, I'm out of ammo, that makes sense, and you will hopefully be able to win your gunfight. Tactical stance activation and tactical stance behavior, leave both of these on default. This isn't something you should be using on any gun really outside of shotguns. Just leave these on default. Armor plate behavior, make sure this is set to apply all, not apply one. This way you can press your armor plate button once and you will start putting on plates. That way you can then focus on using your inputs on actual movement and getting away and being as slippery as possible, rather than having to constantly be pressing a button over and over again. Not good. Definitely want to set this to apply all. Quick C4 detonation. I don't use C4 anyway, but just leave it at default. For your combat advanced settings, there's only two things in here that I would ever change from default. The first one, you always want to turn weapon mount exit delay from, I think it's medium is the default, to instant. This means that if you are mounted on an object and you input a movement bind, so left or right or back or whatever, you'll instantly come off the weapon mount ready to keep firing. Then manual fire behavior. This can be set to hold, which is useful only for burst guns, which aren't currently too good in the game. But if they do become meta again, this setting is really, really insane. It just allows you to hold your input, so you can hold click and you will constantly fire out bursts with only a short delay. Do not use this for semi-auto guns, so guns that fire one bullet. It makes them fire way slower than you could from having this set to press and just spamming the button. It's only good for burst guns. For me at the moment, I've just got this set to press, but as I said, in the future, if burst guns become meta, I might start trying out hold again. And the last settings in here, vehicle behaviors and overlay behaviors. This is all personal preference. Have a read through them and see what you think might work for you. I've not really got any specific recommendations. The only one I might talk about is danger ping behavior. You can set this to actually a specific keybind. So there's a lot of things you can do on a mouse and keyboard. You can actually set a specific keybind rather than having to double tap the normal ping button. I personally like doing the double tap, but some people might not. Some people might find that they accidentally danger ping things when they're just trying to do normal pings or trying to ping multiple things around. So yeah, you've got a lot of options. Make sure you read through all these things, because I'm guaranteeing you probably haven't. And the last thing I want to cover today is your mouse settings in whatever software you have for your mouse. I've got a Razer Viper wireless mouse. You guys might have Logitech mice or anything like that, but you should have settings very similar to this. For your DPI, it's kind of personal preference, but a lot of people use something in the range of 800 to 1000. This just is a nice medium between sort of too slow and too fast, but it is personal preference. This is just going to basically determine your base sensitivity that all of the games that you play are going to work off of. I'd recommend 800. I think it's the perfect medium. Then polling rate, you want to set this to 1000 all the time. The only reason you shouldn't be using 1000 polling rate is if you have a really, really old PC. I used to have a really, really old laptop and I'd have to turn it down to 500 because I'd actually get CPU lag from having this too high. But essentially, as you can see here, it sets how frequent data is sent from your mouse to your PC. It makes perfect sense that you need this as high as possible so that you are constantly sending that information. There's no delay whatsoever. Then the last thing we'll do is open up your Windows mouse properties. I've got an option to do it from here, but you can come down to your settings down here and just type mouse and then mouse settings, then come down to additional mouse options, and you'll open up this little page right here. In here, you want to come to pointer options. Firstly, for pointer speed, make sure it's bang on in the middle. This is 6 out of 11. There's 11 little dashes down here. You want to make sure it's at the 6th one, right in the middle. And you also want to make sure that enhanced pointer precision is off. This is essentially mouse acceleration. If you have this on, every single game you play, except for ones where the raw input overrides this setting. I'm not sure if Warzone does. It's got so many mouse input issues, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. It will feel horrendous. So make sure this is off as well. Then you can click apply and you can close this down and we are all sorted. With all those settings dialed in and your mouse input feeling great, let me leave you with a fun fact. Did you know Big Berthas can drive underwater in Warzone? Well, you probably didn't. And so you need to go and watch this video next, where I'll take you guys through 17 hidden mechanics in Warzone that you didn't know existed and you definitely need to be abusing right now.